Let me introduce Dr. Tony Jenkins. For 2 decades, he has been one of the world's leading voices for peace education. Since 2001, he has served as the managing director of the International Institute on Peace Education, and since 2007, as the coordinator of the Global Campaign for Peace Education. Tony lectures on justice and peace studies at Georgetown University and George Washington University. Today, he will be mapping the growth of peace education initiatives around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Tony Jenkins.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tony Jenkins, and it's my pleasure to be with you here this year for Peace Education Day, exploring the theme of empowering educators for peace. And I really think that one of the things that we truly need to be able to be empowered is to know that we're not in this alone. In our field of peace education, the work that we're doing, challenging violence around the world, can be very overwhelming and daunting. And so I'm hoping today to share a few perspectives that might give us a little bit more hope and empowerment as we step out into the world. So I think I have a relatively unique vantage point that I'd like to be able to share with you. And hopefully I can illustrate somewhat of a big picture overview of some global efforts, not all, but some global efforts, at least those that I'm involved in terms of developments of peace education around the world. And with the last few minutes or so that I have today, I also want to maybe share a few strategies, really simple strategies, for something that we might do together going forward. So I serve as the managing director of the International Institute on Peace Education now for about 22 years, and also the coordinator of the Global Campaign for Peace Education. And these are two of the longest running efforts in peace education in the world. And both grew out of a very big picture concerns. Starting with the International Institute on Peace Education, it was initiated in 1982, founded by Dr. Betty Reardon, really one of the foundational thinkers of the field of peace education, and a number of her colleagues at Teachers College, Columbia University. And at the time, they were particularly concerned with the challenges and issues of nuclear proliferation, and were exploring the possibilities and the role of education in supporting nuclear disarmament, and also obviously working towards creating cultures of peace. So the first institute grew out of a seminar that was held at the college and has grown over time to become, once upon a time an annual program, now a biennial program that brings together educators, activists, academics, artists, all sorts of formal and non-formal peace educators around the world into a rich, intensive learning exchange, exploring local host issues and other cross-cutting themes of peace education. So just this past summer, we held, we're now in our 40th year, we held our institute in Mexico City, Mexico, around the theme of intercultural peace learning. And this wonderful illustration here, one of the exercises led by a group of our participants. So the institute seeks to create local, regional impacts, but it is really a beautiful kind of laboratory where educators can come to exchange ideas and practices and theories and grow the community together on a global scale. Global Campaign for Peace Education was founded in 1999. It was launched as part of an outcome of the Hague Appeal for Peace Conference, which was, at the time, and I still believe to this day, the largest international peace conference in history. And the theme of that conference is around the abolition of war. And so education was seen as a very essential and vital component in a broader strategy of that task. So the campaign has a couple of very specific goals. Number one, to build public awareness and political support for the introduction of peace education into all spheres of education, including non-formal education and in all schools throughout the world. And the second is to promote the education of all teachers to teach for peace. Relatively ambitious goals, as you can imagine. Now, as you look at these goals, they seem to be very kind of high-level policy-oriented, and certainly we seek to influence and shape policy with formal education as a vital part of our strategy of integrating peace education. And we do see a lot of significant developments around the world in this regard. I can't chronicle everything here, but I can just say in the past year, we've witnessed several significant country-level policy efforts to strengthen, to support, and to institutionalize peace education into schools, including efforts in Ethiopia, Malawi, the Philippines, Spain, South Sudan, Uganda, just to name a few. And in addition, let's see, about a year ago in last August, we had the Japan Teachers Union and the China's National Committee of the Educational, Scientific, Cultural, Health, and Sports Workers Union and the Korean Teachers and Education Workers Union agree to the importance of peace education is vital to international understanding and cooperation in a region of obviously increasing regional tensions. At a global level, so you're all aware, UNESCO is really engaged as an important leader in this work, creating sort of normative standards and visions for peace education. And so UNESCO is actually now in the midst of completing a revision of the landmark 1974 recommendation concerning education for international understanding, cooperation, and peace in education relating to human rights and fundamental freedoms. This recommendation is a very important tool for monitoring the progress of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And the revised recommendation that should be coming out hopefully in the next year is going to reflect some evolved understandings of education, as well as address new and emergent threats to peace that have emerged over the past 40 years towards providing international standards for the promotion of peace through education. The Global Campaign for Peace Education has been supporting this process, this revision process, by contributing a technical note on the ways in which education has evolved, and that is being used as the basis of consultations with experts and member state representatives. But the campaign is a lot more than just focused on high-level policy efforts. It also is concerned with education at the grassroots, education in all spheres of learning. So the campaign functions also as a global social movement. It has thousands of individuals, educators, activists, and others working in their respective contexts to advance peace education around the world. Currently, well, it's hard to track how many members we have, but at the moment we're seeing, or at least in the last 12 months, we've seen more than 300,000 individual educators coming to visit the Global Campaign website to access our various resources, and then obviously thousands more engage us through various channels on social media. So it is a broad effort. I just want to try to illustrate that we're not, again, in this alone. And this global social movement of individuals is further supported by a coalition of nearly 300 organizations, schools, NGOs, and others who are all working in various different contexts through peace education to create social and change and transformation. And so I know I started in describing these two initiatives, the Institute and the Global Campaign, as initiatives rooted in addressing global threats. And those threats obviously remain shared challenges, nuclear proliferation, war, and so forth and so on. And now we also would add to that list of global threats, climate change, these kind of global challenges that obviously impact everyone around the globe that require us to work as global citizens together for these challenges. But of course, few of our organizations are working at the scale of tackling these global problems. So peace education takes many forms, and most often peace education that we see practiced is focused more on addressing the quotidian, the day-to-day experiences of violence and injustice of peoples around the world. And so it's really important to tell that aspect of the story of what peace education is about. So one of the tools that I hope you have a chance to access that we've been developing over the years is the Peace Education Global Knowledge Clearinghouse. We launched this about 2 years ago now. It is a broad, searchable database with more than 2,100 different entries related to peace education, covering almost every country around the world, exploring curricula, news, research, reports, opinion and analysis, of different peace education efforts, theory and practice. And what we see in exploring this kind of broader tapestry of peace education is that we see educators working on conflict transformation and peace building education in post-war contexts. We see educators working on efforts of transitional and restorative justice, human rights learning, reconciliation education, sustainable development, gender justice, global citizenship, interethnic, intercultural education, racial justice, preventing violent extremism, nonviolence, social emotional learning, futures education, and the list goes on and on. So I would really encourage you to check out and visit the database with the remarkable resources that we have available to you there. Two more tools I wanted to introduce that I think will help you kind of see where you fit within the broader field, the dynamics of all that's happening around the world. One is the recently established research tool called Mapping Peace Education, which is a global initiative coordinated by the Global Campaign for Peace Education. This is a dynamic site. It's a space where researchers, donors, practitioners, and policymakers can come together to find data and analysis on both formal and non-formal peace education efforts in countries around the world. Now, this is a project still obviously quite in its infancy. We have about a dozen countries that are currently profiled and several more in development. And this is a project that has been made through our coalitional partners. So it's a global research collaborative with 10 organizational partners right now and more than 50 different researchers who are working on developing and analyzing peace education in different countries around the world. And what's contained in these profiles, these comprehensive profiles, are kind of an illustration at a country level of peace education efforts and as they are practiced now in the present and in historical context, an analysis of policy and legislation efforts that are taking place in different countries, documentation of research efforts, of both formal and non-formal developments, a mapping of kind of key actors, opportunities for training and research in peace education, and so forth and so on. We intend it to be a go-to source and site for learning in the field. And we would certainly encourage those of you whose countries are yet to be represented on the map to join us and join some of the research teams who are working to develop new profiles going forward. And the last initiative I want to share is called People of Peace Education. Now, this is a joint project of the Association for Historical Dialogue and Research and the International Institute in Peace Education with the support of the Global Campaign. The People of Peace Education, it's a really dynamic website that seeks to elevate the work of peace education to the general public by providing glimpses of the lives and the work of peace educators from all around the world. And we modeled this a little bit after the acclaimed Humans of New York project, which some of you might be familiar with. And the project features these profiles exploring motivations, challenges, successes, and insights of peace educators working in different contexts. So we think it's really important to bring this narrative and show the dynamism of people working in peace education in different contexts and in different spaces. And we're certainly open to featuring you and others on this site. So I hope you visit it and take a moment to meet some of the wonderful educators that are in our networks. I want to wrap up by just really briefly helping us think a little bit about opportunities and strategies for the future. So obviously the challenges that we address in peace education are immense. One of our tasks is thinking about things like dismantling the war system, preventing climate catastrophe. And those two global challenges are obviously interrelated and really dynamic, finding ways to reduce these risks. And the ways in which we pursue this work is plentiful. Some of us in peace education are working at personal or social levels. So we're engaged in learning that works to change mindsets, challenging systems of oppression, helping people to heal from personal and collective violence and traumas, changing and challenging social relations and dynamics. Some of our work is also more focused on the structural level. So a lot of us are engaged in working to foster change through resisting, envisioning, and building more just and transformative institutions and ways of relating and being with one another. And yet, at another level, many of us are working on the most challenging task, which is transformation at the cultural level, right? So we're seeking to do things like raise consciousness, support the liberation of members of the human community from unjust and immoral cultural practices, and nurture cultures of peace. So there are a lot of different ways that we approach this. In an ideal world, we'd have a holistic frame and an intersectional lens in the way in which we approach this work. But that isn't always necessary. I want us to understand that the path forward is not always a straightforward one. It's really probably many winding paths converging together. So from a strategic mindset, from a strategic point of view, I think the Global Campaign ascribes to this idea developed by Guy and Heidi Burgess of massively parallel peace building. That is what is more than anything necessary today, about creating a global infrastructure for peace for peace, which begins with an invitation for you to join our global community, to participate in this kind of shared effort of massively parallel peace building in whatever ways that you can. Our hope comes from knowing that in our most kind of our local efforts, that we are somehow establishing the foundations of an infrastructure for global change. So, thank you for the opportunity to share today, to give a little bit of a perspective from the view of the Institute and the Global Campaign, and to contribute to today's special event. And I have tremendous confidence that everyone will find hope and opportunities for empowerment through the messages that are shared by everyone today. Thank you.